Hi friends, this is Terry Squires. With today's Nashville, This is Faith. I sat down with Alan O'Neill from Jackson Heights Music, and he shared about the time that he was mad at God because he felt that his dreams were gone. You won't want to miss his episode. When you come to a fork in the road, ask the Lord which way to go. Do you ever feel you are missing out in what God is calling you to do? Are you choosing your way instead of His way? Country gospel music artist Alan O'Neill began his career in gospel music in the 1980s with the band Dixie Melody Boys and traveled the world. Years of success, the group members desired to make a change. And after 15 years in the music business, Alan realized he needed to devote more time to his family. But God made a way for him to do both and led him to the Jackson Heights Band. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith. Alan, what a pleasure to sit down with you today. Ted and I had so much fun the other night at your concert.
Oh, it was a blast.
Got to be in your bus.
Oh yeah, well, we spend a lot of time in the bus, and most people don't realize we really got it kind of made in there, I hate to say.
Yeah, but
nice.
That night before, you told me that your air conditioner went out.
Yeah, we went to all the way to Odin, Indiana with no air conditioning, and which means in a bus there's no windows that open and no fan working. It was 11 men in a bus. It wasn't very pleasant when we got to Odin, Indiana. But we had a great time and a great concert.
Did. Had a wonderful time. Love your music.
Thank you.
It's been a journey though for you, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I'm 67 years old and been doing this since I was about 14. So not all the time, but working through the progress.
Well, let's go back. Where were you born and how did it all start?
I'm born and raised in Raleigh. At 11 years old, my dad, who had been in gospel music since the late 50s, we decided to move to a little town called Kinston, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half east of Raleigh. And got down there. He didn't sing any longer. He had quit and taken a public job and all that. And so we were just what everybody calls normal people at that time. And my dad decided to start singing. And he owned a gospel quartet called the Dixie Melody Boys that he'd been with in the late 50s. And him and a couple of guys decided to go back to singing again. And so I was the young kid who set up merchandise and the sound and all that stuff and dreamed of being a singer one day, you know. And finally, at about 14 years old, right out to Clear Blue, I won't never forget it. We were in Middlesex, North Carolina, at the children's home, singing outside. And my daddy said, "Come here, Alan. We're going to sing bass today." Well, I'm not a bass singer per se, but I could do a little bit, you know. So at 14 years old in Middlesex, North Carolina, I started my singing career, and it was great. And done that actually for a living after that, all the way to 1986.
Well, did you finish, I mean, obviously you finished school and...
Barely, but I did.
Did you know that was your calling?
I did. At the time, I don't know that I knew it was a calling. I just knew I wanted to do it. You know, it's kind of, I can be honest and say I don't know it was a calling, but I just wanted to be a singer so bad, you know. And barely got out of high school. I was one of those kids that only reason I went to high school was to make my mama happy, because I would have traveled and sang and been just as fine. But so got out of high school and started working full time with my dad and with the Dixie Melody Boys, and became an acoustic guitar player. And then during that time, he come up to me one day and says, "Well, our baritone singer is leaving, and you're going to be singing baritone." Well, as a general trait, I don't hear harmony real well, so I have to be taught harmony. Over the years, I've learned it, but at that time, I was freaking out and everything was great. But, you know, so there's the story begins at that point, you know, and
you shared a little bit
sang.
about the first song your dad ever
Well, my dad
taught
was a
you.
big believer when we traveled in the car. My sister, my brother, my mama. My mother was a horrible singer. And if she sang next to a bass singer, she sang bass. If she sat next to a tenor singer, she sang tenor. So we always sang. And I'll never forget the first song he ever taught me actually was a Christian song. And it talks about Jesus going to Calvary. And I guess that's probably what actually probably sparked the first initial thought pattern of salvation. And
How old were you? A little.
8 or 9 maybe, something like that.
Do you remember it?
Barely. As the Savior was walking up Calvary's hill, all the birds hushed their singing, and the leaves stood still. In the fields, all the flowers bowed their lovely heads as the Savior to Calvary was led. And there's a key change. Led, they nailed his hands and they pierced his precious side. All the pain was so great that the tears filled his eyes. Yet he spoke not a word until the last breath he drew. As he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Just a real simple little song that...
Love your voice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. My daddy was a stickler for pitch. The older I get, that's a little harder. But he would hit you with the elbow if you were shading pitch in the back seat while we were riding down the road. But yeah, I wouldn't take anything for those days. It was really great.
How old were you when you decided to follow Jesus?
I was 14. I had sang with the Dixie Melody Boys. I was setting up merchandise at the time and doing sound, and would occasionally go out and sing a song on every program that we did. We were in Laurel, Delaware, Epworth Fellowship Church. Haven't been back since that day. Pastor's name was Jimmy. I don't even know the day my mother passed away, hardly, but I can tell you his name was Jimmy. And I'd sang that morning, and I'd sang a really slow song, and I remember I could sing with passion, and the little ladies on the front row would cry and all that stuff, you know, but yet in my heart I knew I didn't have that, what they were crying and talking about. And the preacher preached on hypocrisy. And every time he went to say a comment, he would be pointing right straight at me. And I'm thinking, somebody's told him that I'm not a Christian, and he's preaching on me this morning. And I gave my life to Jesus that morning and never looked back. It's been great.
Never looked back. You've had a lot of trials and challenges since then. What happened after you were traveling with your dad's band? How long were you with them?
I was with them from the age of 14 till about somewhere around 38 years old, and we had transitioned from Southern gospel music into more of a Christian country thing. It's kind of where we are today, and we were known as the DMB band at that point.
When did you meet your wife?
Believe it or not, at a concert. She came to hear us sing, and she wouldn't even speak to me because she didn't want to be classified as a groupie or anything like that. So her friend who brought her introduced us a couple of days later, and we dated for, she was 14, we couldn't date. I'm a year or two older than Teresa, so at that age we were, you know, we could go to church and hold hands and that kind of thing. But we dated together for almost right at 5 years before we got married.
High school
I got married early at 21.
Young sweethearts.
Yep.
What a blessing that is. We're going to talk about your challenges. We're going to talk about some of your music. I love it. And the heartfelt songs, I love the one, No More Looking Back. And I think that's so important because a lot of us look back
Yep.
and we have regrets, and we're going to talk about that when we come back.
Absolutely.
Alan, when did you know it was time to leave your dad's band?
In 1986, we were doing the Christian country thing. And you got to understand, back in those days, there was Petra, Amy Grant, not even Stephen Curtis Chapman at that point. And there was Southern gospel music. There was nowhere in between. There was no market for Christian country. And we were doing the Christian country thing, and quite honestly, we like to starve to death. I mean, there was just, the country stations wouldn't, or the Christian stations wouldn't play us because we were country, and the Southern stations wouldn't play us because we were rock and roll, which we really wasn't. But it was difficult, and we honestly had a hard time. And in 1986, we decided to disband the Dixie Melody Boys and just kind of go our separate way. Kent, who's with us today, and Frank and all those guys, we just separated.
What did your dad think?
I think he was relieved because he could go back into Southern gospel music where he came from, and he had another 25 years in the music business after that.
So he had his band going, you all decided to do this.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, I was mad with the world. I was never going to sing again. You know, Lord, you let me down. I can't.
Now, how many years were you out there working with the new band? And
probably about 5 years at
5
that
years.
point. Mm-hmm. So we did the D&B band from 1981 to 1986. So that's where that time was. And Daddy was still traveling with us, but it was more of a Christian country thing. So when we decided to quit, basically we didn't decide to quit. We had to quit. It was just one of those things. And we all went, me and Frank Kent, we all went our separate ways. And I went into a business career, and Kent went into music ministry, and Frank went to work with American Airlines. And so it was, you know, the Lord probably knew what he was doing, not probably, but the Lord knew what he was doing at the time, but I was mad. I sold every guitar I owned and vowed I'd never sing another note. I was done with these Christian preachers and singers and all. I was never going to do it again. About 13 years ago today, a guy calls and says, "Hey, Alan, are you doing any singing?" I said, "No." He said, "If I found the guys, would you and Kent and Frank do a reunion deal?" And I said, "Yeah, if you can find them." I said, "It's been 25 years since I spoke to Frank. I have no idea where he's
Really?
at." And it wasn't that we were mad. We just went our separate ways and our lives grew apart. I stayed in touch with Kent, and he called me within 2 days and said, "I found the guys." And he says, they said, "If you'd do it, they'd do it." And so we sang in Kinston, North Carolina, and done about 30 minutes. And I thought, these bunch of old guys don't sound terrible, but this is kind of fun again. And then it just kind of blossomed into where we are today as Jackson Heights. When we started back, we dropped the D&B band name, and we were trying to figure out what our identity needed to be at this point. We thought we'd just start fresh, new music, new songs, and that kind of thing. And we lived in a little crossroads outside of Kinston called Jackson Heights. And the only other Jackson Heights I knew of at the time was Jackson Heights, New York. It's out on towards Long Island. And
so that's how you got the
That's
name.
where our name came from. It's a little crossroads. Me, Kent, and Frank, and Olin, the drummer, all lived in trailers in eastern North Carolina in a trailer park, and it was in Jackson Heights. So that's where we got our name from, and we started back. And
now, what year was it that you started back?
this was probably 13 years ago. So it was
Okay.
what, 2012? Let's see, where are we at? You're in 2012 or something like that. So
Not too long ago, then.
no, it hasn't been terribly long ago. So, but we've enjoyed it, and you know what? We got a song in our heart this time we never had. You know, we have a desire in a completely different way. We know where we kind of know where our, what if you want to call it, our market. We know where our market is and where we belong. We sing to a lot of small and medium-sized churches. They don't get the big bands, they don't get the big groups and that kind of thing. And you saw our show the other night, and all that sound and lighting and stuff, we have set it up in a building that didn't seat more than 50 people. And
I think there was more than 50.
well, it was that night.
It
was,
packed.
but I'm talking about we have
okay.
set that system up in a building that wouldn't even hardly hold 50 people.
Okay.
And all that gear, and if only 2 people shows up, we give them everything we give you the other night.
Well, I want to take you back a little bit before going into Jackson Heights. You were angry with God, and you were off the road for several years. Mm-hmm. How was God working in your heart then?
Well, he put me in a little church in Kinston, North Carolina, and he put me with a pastor who loved music. And when he was in his teens, he used to go to PTL, the old Jim Baker show, and we used to do the Jim Baker show on a regular basis. And he remembers seeing us there, so he remembered me from that, and he kept needling me, come on and sing a song. Why don't you sing with us this Sunday? Why don't you sing? And I finally broke down and sang a couple of songs with him, and I started singing a little bit more and more, and then I found a love for singing again.
What was your relationship with God though then?
It was very good. It was really good. I wasn't mad about it anymore. I had pretty much just let all that go, and I just come to a decision in life that it just was supposed to be that way. I was having children. Both of my boys were born, while I was home, and I got to spend the time with them, and so it was all great at that point. It just like a light switch flipped, and I was ready to sing again.
I think he gives us that time to build our character because he has bigger and better plans for us.
Absolutely.
And you need that time to rest. So from there, Jackson Heights was born.
Yep, it really was.
And so tell me what it was like the first few years.
Well, we come back together, getting to know Frank again, because like I say, we were really close friends back in the day, but to go 25 years, we found out a lot about each other, children, and where we'd been in life and what we had done. And me and Kent had stayed together in contact, and Kent had been writing some music and all that, and had some great music, and just getting to know the guys again and was a blessing. And then we all had the same thing, is we know we have a unusual kind of sound for it to be what's today is classified as Christian country. But
do you think you were ahead of your time?
Oh, no doubt. And we were probably the first or second. Well, Mid-South, the guys that Kent with used to come to hear us as children, as young boys, and that's where Kent ended up at Mid-South later on. But yeah, there just wasn't a market. We were pushing the envelope, and we didn't have the time to see it all the way to the end. And I think that's probably why I was so disappointed. But coming back together was like a whole new, we all three or four with Olin had the vision to do it again, and God's blessed us tremendously. I'm here today with you.
Well, it wasn't the time then, but it's the time now. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk more about your music. The lyrics are touching so many lives, and we're going to talk a little bit more about your testimony when we come back.
Yeah.
Alan, we talked a little bit earlier about your testimony. Can you share it with me?
Yeah, it used to bother me that I didn't have a fantastic, heart-driven, compelling story. I've never done drugs. I'm not an alcoholic. I didn't come from a broken home. Unlike Jason Lovins, who has got a wonderful story.
I know Jason.
I hear him and I think,
powerful story.
Yeah, unbelievable. And at some point in the last couple of years, actually, I think I come to grips, you know what? God spared me all these troubles. And even though sometimes I think I don't have anything to offer a congregation as far as something really compelling, at 14 years old, I didn't know Jesus Christ. And if I'd have got killed in a car wreck that day, I'd have died and went to hell. And until I asked him to come into my life as my personal Savior, my story really didn't matter. Because God didn't say we want to save a drunk or we want to save an alcoholic. We just we want people to be believers in Jesus Christ and accept me as your personal Savior. And I've never really talked a whole lot about it because I just didn't think I had a testimony. I have one because I was saved and born again, but it wasn't that aha moment.
But it shows his faithfulness to us, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's given me so many things, a wonderful wife, and we've been married 46 years in September, and, four grandchildren. And, I look back and I don't even know how did you get here? I'm not deserving. I had a wonderful career in the music business. I mean, in the commercial industry, and not in the music industry, which has afforded me to do this today. I am so thankful where I am at today. And people say I would do things different. I don't know if I used to say I would have gone to Nashville when Bobby Bear asked me to sing backup and play acoustic, but I wouldn't have been married, wouldn't have had these children, wouldn't know you today. And so I really have come to the conclusion that, man, I've had a wonderful past and I would never change it for anything.
He's so good. He's so faithful.
Absolutely.
And your music speaks to that. Some of the songs, No More Looking Back, and Finishing Strong. God knows your heart.
Yep.
Tell me about some of those
Kent
songs.
writes a lot of our music, and he writes from the same heart that I've got, because he is wanted to be in the music business so bad, and Kent was in the same boat I was.
And he has a beautiful voice.
He's an unbelievable talent. He's a great guitar player. He communicates with people very well.
I want to have him on.
Oh, he'll be a great one to have on. He communicates really well. I have ADD, so I have a tendency, I can be in the middle of a story on stage and telling you something really heartfelt, and the lady on the front row does this, then I'm going, oh my gosh, she's ready to go home, and I've lost my train of thought, and now what do I do, But the music is really good. No More Looking Back is a personal favorite of mine, because I don't want to look back. I want to see what the future has for Alan O'Neill and his family, and Jackson Heights and that Jackson Heights family. And we have something to tell people. And
I think a lot of people look back and they have regrets. What if I would have done this? What if I would have done that?
Well, I think all of us have that. We probably do that. Even I do that. Even I say I don't, but you always say, what if I went down that road? What would have been different? But when you stop and think and look at it, it's like, nah, you're on the right path,
What song speaks to you the most, personally?
He's Good to Me. It's called Good to Me. And I sang it the other night. It's just kind of my personal testimony right now. It's hard for me to describe, because like I said, I've not been an alcoholic. I've not been a drug addict. I've never had cancer, but God's been so good to me, because He's allowed me to live this wonderful life. I've got the family I've got. Our grandkids are healthy. I see these commercials for these babies with cancer, and I think, thank you, Jesus, that our family is safe from that right now. You never know what tomorrow has. And God give me the ability to be strong if it ever does happen. But right now, it's just, So that song, Good to Me, is just a good song.
What's next for Jackson Heights, and where are you going? Where's God leading you?
Well, we really feel compelled to kind of stay in the market we're in. Don't get me wrong, as a singer and as a person, we would love to sing to 5,000 people every night. That I would be lying if I told you that. But our audience is that small to medium church in rural America that normally don't get a whole lot of it, and we do very good. And we take our program with our lighting, our sound, the whole nine. And we spent probably more money on sound equipment and lighting than we have anything in this Jackson Heights area, because we want it to be as good as it can possibly be. And when we show up to these churches for the first time, the pastor says, are y'all bringing all of that in? And we set it up, and we got a wonderful technician that is unbelievable, and then making me sound decent and keeping it in control where the people can really enjoy it. But I see our future in rural America. I really do. It's just kind of like these little small theaters. A lot of theaters have these shows on Saturday nights, and we can we do a few country songs that, matter of fact, when you were there the other night, we did 2 or 3 country songs, and most people didn't even know it, because the Trace Atkins song, You're Gonna Miss This, we do it. But everybody takes it in a very different context when you're in church, But
You're Gonna Miss It.
Yeah.
What's it about?
So You're Gonna Miss This just talks about a little girl when she, first time her mother had to drop her off at school, and she was embarrassed, so she made her mother sit down the street, and she walked out, and her mother kissed her on the head and says, you're gonna miss me one day, The next verse talks about, the girl getting her apartment, or their daddy coming by, and she can't hardly wait to get married and have children. And he says, just slow down, baby girl. You're going to miss these days one of these times, And then the third verse is she's married and got children. The plumber's over. There's water running out of the dishwasher. And I know this is terrible. I know this is awful. But one day you're going to say, man, I wish my dishwasher would leak again so my babies could step through the water. So it's that kind of thing. And I look out and there's these mothers out there, and the daddies too, especially daddies with little girls. And they just love that song. But what's even more amazing, in our program, we talk about how we came up with our kind of a country sound. And one of the most fun things we do, and this is a risk, when you're sitting in a Mennonite church or a Southern Baptist church or a Nazarene church, and I look at them and I ask the people, you know what? The very first time I ever heard music that didn't have a bass singer was the Monkees. Anybody ever heard of the Monkees? And inevitably the pastor's wife will go, it's always the pastor's wife. Yeah, I remember. And we break into a chorus or two of one of the Monkees songs, and it's like the whole audience just relaxes, sits down, and then I believe we could sing anything at that point and it would be fine,
You have new music coming?
We got new music coming. We're going to record in October. Matter of fact, Stephen Curtis, before he was ever a singer, I can remember him and his wife coming to Birmingham and peddling songs to us, who at the time was DMB Band. He wrote some of our very early music, and on our last album, we finally did a Stephen Curtis song that he did, which was Great Adventure. This next album we're doing in September, October this year is a lot of songs we did that nobody ever heard in the early days. They were great material, great songs. And because we wasn't that popular, nobody heard them. We're cutting a whole brand new album of all those old songs. And some of them got the original Stephen Curtis songs that I don't even know if he remembers writing.
Well, Alan, I can't wait. I can't
Thank you
wait
so much.
to hear your new music. Love it. Love Jackson Heights. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me, and it's been a great, relaxing time.
My friend, are you struggling with regrets in your life? Like Alan said, no more looking back. The Lord is taking you to a new place. Follow Him. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith. Hi everyone, this is Terry Squires with today's Nashville, This is Faith. Look who I have in the home today.
Hey everybody.
Robbie McGee, Mid-South Band. You won't want to miss his episode, what happened when he went scuba diving, and what God is doing in his life.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
See you soon.